state of mind. But you walk right past me, pretending like you don't see what's yours for the taking tonight. Ooh, show me your soul. Baby, I'll show you mine. Show me your soul. Can't you see it's way past time? How expensive do I have to be? I mean, I spell it out before you get it, baby. Show me your soul. And honey, I'll show you mine.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing? Welcome to today's episode of Bathrobe Moments, and I'm your host, Lauren Michaels Harris. Welcome to the 4th day of March, everybody. We are marching forward one day at a time. How are you doing today? There's the bell of purpose, still here, still in effect, and still a real thing. When you hear that, believe it or not, it's your chance, my opportunity, for all of us, an opportunity to be a part of something greater than ourselves. What that means is that when you hear the bell, there's something going on in the air. There's some kind of frequency that's just been raised. I want you to not go speeding past it. It's not always roadkill because it's in the middle of the road. Stop, turn around, do a U-ey real quick. Take a look at it. Might find something you want to throw in the car and take home with you. So that's the purpose of the bell of purpose. Ding. And help me welcome to the show, as always, my version of Ed McMahon. This is Lucy McGillicuddy Ricardo, my sidekick, and my best gal pal. Yes. And so I always check the news, first thing in the morning, just the headlines. I Google, show me the headlines. And there was a thing about Meghan Markle and what's going on between her. I didn't know until a couple weeks ago that they had denounced the crown and all that. I didn't know that. Who has time for the news, right? So anyway, not too much going on, which is a good thing, the usual. So we can go about business as usual and get out there and make changes in the world that are lasting and that are necessary. Can I get an amen up in here? So, from time to time, I'll bring someone back that's been here before because there's something new, something exciting, just something that's worthy of a second run through. And my guest today is exactly in that category. His name is James Case. I call him Jim. His friends call him Jim. He is a husband, an author, has a celebrated television show by the name of Adventures in Truth. And he's also founder of a little thing called The Science of Transformation. So I noticed, and we're going to talk to him about it. His show airs on Fridays at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's 4 p.m. if you're on the Pacific Coast. And this week, really interesting. I'm going to have to stop by and check it out. His guest this week I saw is a guy named Bill McKenna, and they're going to be talking about awakening. And I love that topic. I love it. So that's the kind of stuff. Adventures in Truth. And what I want to do right here, you guys, is Jim is a fellow network mate, I guess you could say, on the E360 television network. And his show, I remember when he started it, we worked together on the book promo you saw at the top of the hour, and also on his show opener. And I'll remember, this has always stuck out to me as one of my most interesting and exciting digital media content creation experiences, if you can say it like that, with someone, because he has such a story, and finding the courage to turn everything in your world into an adventure is not an easy mindset to capture. But once you have it, transformation just goes through the roof. Your trajectory for purpose has changed completely, and I know that to be true, not only from my own experience, but through the door known as Jim Case. So take a look. lot of truth in there.
And I was getting ready. I was like, okay, here I am, ready. Good morning.
I know. I was watching you on the hidden nanny cam that we have inside the studio you're broadcasting from, and I saw you fanning yourself. What was going on?
Wow, Lauren, I got to tell you that your intro, all of it, just I'm a little verklempt, quite honestly.
Oh.
It was very moving, and I love your heart. I love the way you see the world. I just love the things that you create. Every time I hear that intro, I'm engaged. Every time I see the commercial, the music, I just love it.
I know.
So it's just
right in.
It's
It's your story, though, Jim.
I know.
It's your story. I know, but isn't that a
amazing.
wonderful thing, though? Really, that's a great place to kick off this interview today. Once you say hello and tell everybody where you're at on the planet and catch us up a little bit on the backstory, I'd like it if you could just jump right in on what it feels like when you hear when the reflection of your journey is shown back at you. I think that's a wonderful blessing. That I would not want anyone to leave this world without experiencing at least once. And you can talk about it, and we can talk about it, and perhaps some of you out there can join in and talk about it as well. That's what we're hoping for. Engagement is key. Let's have that conversation, shall we? So I wanted to say, first off, I love the title of the book, and it's so true, because truth is indeed the adventure.
Yes,
it really is. That's when it starts getting good. Right, from every direction, but before you can actually step into that ooey gooey chewy center known as truth, it's all those layers of all those different things that make the need for transition possible, and necessary to get through those layers, those swamplands, if you will, because they're not pitfalls, they're not endless bottomless pits or holes, they're just slow down areas. There's speed bumps. And so I would love for you to talk about how you came about doing what you do. And truth, you picked a powerful one when you said that. A lot of people are afraid of the truth. So let's jump right in, can we?
We can.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
So the adventure, I mean, obviously the adventure started when I got here, but for me in earnest, when I was standing outside my parents' home at 16 years old, at 2:00 in the morning, having snuck out of my parents' house and stolen their car.
Okay.
So I could go out and play with my friends. And I was at that point deeply exploring already my sexuality. And standing
wait a minute. That wasn't just any old car, was it?
Wasn't just any. Which car was it?
I mean, wasn't it like really expensive?
Well, it could have been on one of the many times, because it wasn't only one time that happened, which is how I ended up at that juncture, because my mom had figured out I had left the house. And so she locked the screen doors.
Oh, I remember that.
Key. Yeah. And I stood out there outside of the house at that time and said, what am I going to do? And what I knew I couldn't do was knock on the screen door. And I turned around and walked away. And we lived on a street in the middle of farmland in Pennsylvania, and about 5 miles from the nearest town. And so I walked to the nearest town called Doylestown, and never went back.
You dropped the car back off, and then because you didn't
yeah, I came home. I came home that night, having used the car,
and
parked it. You know, I had a whole thing going about how I got the car out of the driveway and how I got it back home at night, so they never knew. And
this is an ongoing thing.
Oh yeah. No. So I had gone. So I'd gone out. I'd come home, and at coming home, in the interim, my mother had discovered I'd left, and so she locked the doors. And I had that moment of, what do I do here? Well, I know what I need to do is be out there. So I did, and that began an incredible journey that has unfolded in unbelievable ways. I lived in New York City for a while, pursuing a dream, thinking I was going to be an actor.
You look like one, that young boy in the picture.
Yes,
like
he was a pretty
kind of guy.
boy.
He was
a pretty
boy. But before we get too far away from the front porch of that house that you walked away from,
yes.
What do you think? What do you know today to have really been going on at that time? That moment. I love these when we come to those moments when the person goes, I see it like it was yesterday. I was
Mhm.
standing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That's a moment of transformation in and of itself. They're divine intersections. So tell us what was swirling around? What was that hurricane, that whirlpool all about?
So it largely circled around my sexuality at that point. I had part of the reason I was sneaking out was so that I could go out and kind of explore this thing that was going on inside of me,
Mhm.
and get into that whole energy and that feeling, and meeting men who were like me, because I mean I was 16 years old. Interestingly enough, even though as pretty as I was as a kid,
Yeah.
I also looked older as a kid in real life. So I could pass for 19 or 20 or 21 because I could get in the bars when I was 16.
Okay, so
Um,
90, so we were 20, 21 years old. So we're talking about the mid 90s. This was happening.
this would have been, yeah.
You were
So
20, 21, and like
no,
what,
no, I was
97?
16 when that happened.
Right,
I was
that was the
16.
90s, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
were in,
80s. Let's see.
I said
60, so
90s.
56. So it was 64, 74, 84. I would have been 20 and 84.
Right, and I
So
said you were 16 in the 90s. That was supposed to be a slide in compliment. Clearly it was too tall of a tale because it did not make it anywhere near where you needed to let it in to laugh at it.
I
Okay.
wasn't even
You know,
close.
I don't know who the hell he talking about, but
Well,
anyway.
it's funny, Lauren, because I have the hardest time in my life. My whole life, I've had the hardest time. I know people, and you seem to be one of those people who can pick a day out of 1979 and go, yeah, it was a Thursday and it was in April in 1979. I'm going, I think it was. I have to go back to my birthday and count the days so I can come back to the birth year, because I've completely lost track of that continuity as far as understanding what decade it occurred in. I just know that it happened, and then that
Mhm,
happened, and then that happened. It's a
mhm.
strange thing.
So
I don't
Jim, when this thing was so strong, this itch was so strong that you had to scratch it by leaving your home. No goodbyes, no letter, anything, because you hadn't
know.
planned it.
You're right.
No, nothing but what you had on your back and what you had in your pocket. So what went through your mind? What do you remember going through your mind as you walked away from security to find something that you really didn't even know looked like or what name to put on it? How does a person do that? What did you reach for? What did you pull out to keep you moving away from the homestead until you got to where it was you landed?
I think ultimately, initially, and I've said this a lot, but you're going to think this is kind of a funny answer, but what kept me going was arrogance. Believe it or not. What moved me was, I think I was looking at, okay, if I go back into this situation, it's going to be a struggle, because I had come out. I didn't actually formally come out to my parents. My mother found a letter under a blotter on my desk in my bedroom to a guy that I had been trysting with, and
Not trysting. Now there's something you don't hear every day. Okay, we'll have to talk about that during commercial break.
it was not a commercial.
Uh-huh.
And this letter was, she couldn't understand why I was writing this guy the letter, because the guy actually knew my dad, was a customer of my father's, but I worked with him in in local theater, and that's how I met him. And so when I came out, when that happened, and then I had been sneaking out of the house. I came home that day. My dad came home that day and beat the snot out of me. I mean, beat me from top to bottom. I will not have a gay kid in my house. And blah, blah, blah. Bear in mind, my parents are amazing people. My dad has passed about 2 years ago, I think. But my parents were always present. My parents were always in my life and always a part of my life, except for that 10 or 15 years after I left home. But it wasn't a situation where I was leaving an abusive home. I wasn't leaving. I was leaving actually a pretty nice upper middle class home, tennis court in the backyard with a pool and the whole 9 yards. And I went,
all?
yeah, that's all. And we lived on a house with 13 on a street with 13 houses. So that
I thought you were going to say 13 servants.
Yeah, no, didn't have any of those.
Hey, right.
No, didn't go that far.
Okay.
So the thing in me, I think, was ultimately this need for adventure, this need to explore the world, because I had already been doing it, but I was doing it surreptitiously. Because I was sneaking out, and I'm like, I don't want to go back into this because I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
But what was it, Jim, that was had such a pull I mean, because at 16, you're thinking about college, you're involved in things in your community, in your school, you have best friends. That's your world when
Yeah,
you're 16 years old. And you didn't even drive away. Most 16 year
I
olds would have stole the car and just took it as far as they could and left it somewhere and kept going. Or did you take a Greyhound? And if you did, how did you choose where did you end up going eventually?
So I literally walked through I don't know how many took me a couple hours to get to the town.
Okay.
I had a friend in that town in Dolestown, which was nearby, that I called him and said, "Hey, I need a place to be." And I mean, I'm paraphrasing because I don't specifically remember the conversation, but he was able to get his mother to allow me to come stay in the basement of their house for a while. It was a finished basement, and
now, did they contact your parents and tell them where you were?
I think she may have, but I don't recall that because I didn't. I was really clear that I wasn't going to live there. It wasn't a question. It's so funny because as you're talking, I'm thinking back, and on reflection, the decision in the moment, I think, was all about me. Was about I've got this feeling in me, this desire in me about who I am and what I want to. Not even what I want to do, just who I am, that I need to explore. And I need to do that. And I'm putting more succinct words to the feeling of it.
Right.
Because it wasn't about you horrible people, I'm leaving this house. And
it was a pull.
It was all here. And
would you say it was a force pulling you?
Absolutely.
Calling you. I relate to that that's what took over. I walked away from a record contract and everything because of that pull to find my biological mother. I just couldn't ignore it. Talk about a siren song, right? Yeah. It's this deep thing within us. I think it's, I always say when you get that calling on your life, it's not a conference call. So many times you're the only one it's a bat phone, right?
It's true.
So
it's a really great analogy, the bat phone.
Yeah, it is. So how long did your parents go without knowing where you were or what had happened to you?
I want to say I think they knew because after I'd ended up at my friend's house, I was only there for maybe a week or two. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to another high school friend's family, but they took me in knowing the situation. So I want to say it was a couple weeks. I know I had, it was probably a couple weeks before they knew, but I would not allow any of them to make any inroads.
You're a runaway.
Oh, totally. And I was like, no, I'm not going to deal with them. No, interestingly enough. And even beyond that, so the end of the school year that year, because I had continued to go to school. That was part of the agreement with staying with the family and blah, blah, blah. But I had gone to school. I'd gotten sick. I'd gotten some strep throat. And I was out of school for 3 or 4 days. And I went back to school, and the school would not take me because I didn't have a note from my actual parents. And I said, you got to be kidding me. You're telling me I can't go back to school because I don't have a note from my parents, and yet I'm standing here wanting to go back to school.
Right.
And no, they wouldn't allow me back in school. And so I ended up leaving school at that point.
Do you feel that added to do you feel, I'm thinking it through. Do you feel that decision from the school to not let you back in, that seems kind of odd anyway, for a kid who's been missing? And I'm sure they must have spoken to your parents. Why isn't he coming to school or something? But do you feel, well, let me just say, how do you look at this, Jim? Do you look at it like somebody dropped the ball? This shouldn't have happened to a kid. Or do you feel like there was something divinely working on the people and the players inside the scene of your life that were feeding into the end goal of purpose?
I'll tell you, Lauren, it's such an interesting question because your questions are forcing me to look at it, and they're questions that I've never asked before. They're questions that have never come up in the experience before, which I find extraordinary.
A lot, believe it or not.
I find it extraordinary. I'm like, holy crap, yeah, why didn't they ever call the cops? Holy crap, yeah, why didn't they? And trust me, it hasn't. I don't think it had anything to do with them going, thank God he's gone.
Right.
At all.
Maybe they trusted you enough to know he's finding his way.
I guess, because they didn't ever try to get me. They didn't ever try to come back. There was a period after I left the second family, and then I got my first on my own place. I moved into a home with a crazy woman who used to sleep
I know
naked.
her.
Yeah, she used to sleep naked in her bed with
Oh,
her
no,
door
wrong,
open.
wrong crazy woman. With her
And I
what?
was like,
She slept
she's
naked in her bed with what?
with the door wide open. So
Oh, that was a
and
cougar. That was a
she
cougar.
she must have been, yeah. But I was too naive, I think, to even catch that.
She was trying to convert you.
I guess.
All
I
he
guess.
need is one night with a real woman. I'll set him right. I'll fix him. Right.
But there was a point where because my dad was in the car business, so he had given me a car for a period of time, and I screwed that up somehow. I don't remember what I did. It was a Plymouth Fury 3, big old gray thing. But anyway,
Oh, I remember those.
4-door moving tank. But anyway, so there was some contact, but not really anything of substance, except at certain junctures. So when I decided to go back to college and I'd gone to visit my best friend in college, and she was at a private Catholic college, and I went to visit her, fell in love with it, and thought, I got to have this experience. I have to figure out how to have this experience.
College.
So college. So I went and signed up for my GED and got the GED book, which is about this big, and took it up when she was helping me study. And I was just so frustrated because it was the dumbest book I'd ever read. Half of the stuff I'd never heard of. And I went and we were fishing through the book, and we're looking at the stuff, and it says, oh, you only have to pass with 70% or better to get your degree. And I took the book and I picked it up and I threw it out the window. Literally, physically threw it out the window.
Well, newsflash, you know, all that stuff you said, I ain't never heard of this. That's because your ass wasn't in school that day. Hadn't thought of that either, had you?
No, but you got to know too, the funny thing about school for me was I so disliked the whole environment. I didn't like school at all.
Were you mature? Did you consider yourself more mature than your peers? Because you were because that was that people don't understand when the sexuality thing comes into play, sometimes even before, you know, of course, minus any type of abuse sexually or anything like that, those natural hormonal things start happening in puberty, and you start questioning because you know, so it is an adult situation. Don't you agree?
Yeah, well, I was obviously dealing with an adult theme or something
right.
bigger than me.
Right.
No, because as far as the way I thought I was perceived was kind of weird nod.
Well, did you think something was wrong with you? Did you ever think that? Being in that sequestered?
I thought that most of my life, but
right. That was a dumb question. Right. Ask yourself that, Lauren. Right.
Did I? Oh, wow. I think I didn't understand. I just didn't understand me and my relationship with people.
You didn't have even one gay friend at your high school?
No.
But you knew of some?
Not in my school.
Really?
I had one boy that I had a hard crush on.
No pun intended, y'all.
No pun intended. Actually, there were two. I'm sorry. I'm not being truthful. There was one that I thought was for sure, who ended up not being so, I don't think. And another guy that the same thing, but it was, to me, it was just, that was sort of how I explored it. But
was it dangerous, Jim, for people to know? I'm just saying, because I don't know exactly what the dynamic was where you lived, but you know, some places depending on where a gay person has to come out, the community has a lot to do with it. Even for an African-American guy in the inner city, the last thing you want your block to know is that you're on the down. It's better to be on the DL than to just be gay, which is, so what was that? Was that anything? Were you trying to get to the big city?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was on my. I literally thought I was going to be an actor. I knew I was going to work with Steven Spielberg. I just knew that I was going to be it, and everything I thought about in my life was to that end.
So what was going on that big span of years that you were estranged from your parents? What was going on? And since they had known where you were and stuff, what created, in your opinion, or I'm sure you know it's not an opinion, you lived it. What caused that rift of silence, that silence, that space? Those are years you can't get back. How do you feel about that today? And how did it play into the world and the relationship? I know your dad passed, but the overall relationship between your parents. Did it eventually make it worth it, or was it still hanging in the balance?
Yeah, it took quite a few years. Actually, I want to say 1, 2, 3. I want to say it was close to 3 or 4 years. So as we're talking, I'm remembering things like the car and talking to them about school because I had to go back to them and say, look, I need to get a loan. And I said to my parents, because I had to get a loan for school to go to college because I did go to that college.
Okay.
It ended in a very disastrous way, but I did get to go to that college for a year and a half, and it was a private Catholic college, and I lived in the seminary because I thought I was going to be a priest at that point.
What?
Yeah.
Well, how you just go slip that under the door like it was an invitation to a cocktail party or something?
Talking about priest.
Wow.
No, the Missionaries of the Sacred Heart. I was going. The college was the Allentown College of St. Francis of Assisi, St. Francis de Sales.
Wait. Okay, I gotta understand this. So you leave home and all that security, tennis court, pool to explore your what you believe to be your gay sexuality, right? But then you in those same informative years, you decide to become a priest who has to have a vow of celibacy.
Because I wasn't. That was all about. Is this really who I am? Is this really what I want to be? Is this who? Because to
was
your
that
question
decision? Okay, go ahead.
To your question a minute ago, I was the thing that I always led with, and I remember sitting in my friend's kitchen having this conversation with her mother, and her mother was a lesbian, or is a lesbian, I shouldn't say was, and she knew I was gay, but I was still young, so talking about it was awkward. But the thing I always led with that always kind of resonated for me is that people would ask me about it, and I'd be like, "That's not who I am. That's a part of who I am. That's how I express my sexuality. That's not who I am as a human being. So I don't walk around carrying the badge of gay. It's part of who I am."
That badge over there.
I
can't do it. It's like looking in the mirror.
I do the
Look,
same.
I still can't do it. Where is it? There it is.
Look
Okay.
over there.
Oh my God, that's so scary when that happens. I'm like, stop. Okay, go ahead.
And I don't mean to say that in a way that the badge is anything to be embarrassed by.
I'm the same way.
So that carried me to college and my friend, and I met a girl there who became an immediate best friend, who fell in love with me, who I thought maybe I should fall in love with. There was this wildly bizarre connection.
A girl.
But at the same time, I was living in the seminary trying to figure out, okay, I feel this calling on me. I don't know what the hell it is. I don't know what's going on, but I feel it. I feel this connection to this greater thing, to God, what I consider God. And that had always been there. And I think that, to the point when we talked about the moment standing out of my parents' house, that moment of calling, same thing. So that experience ended up spiraling wildly out of control. Whatever it was in me that was trying to understand me and the part of me that was fighting against it came together there.
Was it ever in control?
Which
because
part?
It wasn't true to the part when you said, well, if for something to spiral out of control, it refers to the point where it was within control.
No.
But we're talking about Adventures in Truth here today, Jim. So do you really believe it ever was in control?
No, and that's a very good point. Because the way it ended was I was at a party. Well, I was invited to a party with my best friend Sue, who was the reason I was at that school. To this day, I don't remember her ever showing up. I don't remember ever talking to her. I got drunk. And I took my little Ford Fiesta that I had at the time, and I drove over every traffic sign on campus in my little Ford Fiesta, my 4 on the floor. Back up, go to the next one. The campus police finally stopped me, and I was ripped beyond words and sent me back to the seminary where I was living. And I proceeded to take a half a bottle of aspirin and drink another beer, and decided I was going to lay down, and that was it. I was done. I couldn't find my way out of that. And I laid there for about a half an hour, and nothing was happening. And I'm like, really? This is what you want to do? This is how you want to end it? You want to be here with a half a bottle of aspirin and a beer? And so I got up and found somebody in the seminary and said, hey, I just did this. I think I should go to the hospital. And so they took me to the hospital. And I had one of those angel visits when I was in the hospital.
Okay. Hold that right there. Perfect. Because I wanted to come back from break and get into this thing about this conflict, this search conflict, looking for two things that aren't supposed to go together, supposedly. And I wanted to talk to you about, you said, so you had an angel visit, and I want to know if you ever have considered, what did you say about the possibility of when you went seeking to be a priest while you were simultaneously seeking your sexuality, was it based on some type of predisposed spiritual guilt, for lack of a better term, like, let me just do it, because a lot of us deal with that, and a lot of us come from those deep rooted spiritual backgrounds that have a lot to do with how we start the race. So we're going to talk about that in this angel visit thing I'm really excited about, and more. So get your questions together, your comments for author and television show host Jim Case, also known as James Case. We'll be back in just a moment. Please don't go away. Okay, everybody, we're back. Welcome back to today's installment of Bathrobe Moments. I'm your host, Lauren Michaels Harris. I'm here today with my guest, Jim Case. He's an author and television show host of Adventures in Truth. And before we get Jim back in here, I want to say thank you to both my sponsors for today's show. First, livetraders.com, where if you feel like you have a nose for stock trading, but you just don't know how to get started, head over to livetraders.com, and they've got just what you're looking for. And also, my favorite, Intention Pen. .com intention pen. Here is mine. Through me, not from me, is how mine is inscribed. And I use this pen every single day, at least once, to set my intentions into motion. I encourage you all to at least consider, get over to intentionpen.com and see if you can find your way into one of these intention pens. You won't be sorry, and that's a promise. We're back. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Yes, before we get started, I wanted to just remind everybody we're talking about Adventures in Truth, and Jim was giving us backstory details about how he got to the point where we're going to pick up now. You had an angel experience, and I think I want you to now, if you could, start weaving this into a nice basket we can carry the rest of the show on, or in rather, wherein you start taking us how, please let it run parallel is what I'm trying to get to, your program, transformation. The science of transformation, because I have to believe that a lot of the building blocks for this program you're describing through these pieces of the journey that you're explaining. So let's pick up there and let that run with starting with the angel moment, if that's okay. Okay,
Sure.
cool.
So the angel moment was, again, I don't know how many have had this experience, but I was in the hospital. I was in the emergency room. They had given me Epcac because I had taken half a bottle of aspirin in an attempt to end my life. And part of the confusion and part of what I remember of that moment was just feeling so not heard or seen, or I had this whole thing going on about my best friend not showing up, and the reality was she was there with me the whole time. We had conversations. I was just in whatever space I was in. So there I was in the hospital bed, and this I don't even know who he was. I don't know if he was a nurse. I don't know if he I don't know who he was. And he came into the space, and he came up to me, and he was engaging me and telling me, everything was good. And but there was something in the way he engaged me that he heard me, he saw me, and he asked me a question. And I looked at him and I said, I can't answer right now because I'm going to throw up. And I did, and spent the next 5 minutes purging my system. That person who brought that presence into the room, I never saw again. I don't know who he was. I don't know what his name was. He just brought this presence of love into the space that just, it just changed something for me. It to this day, it still rattles me a little that this being, this person, this beautiful person showed up in my space, and I was never able to find them again. Absolutely one of those moments. But I think it helped to fine tune all of the questions I had at that point about, there was no longer a question about who I was or who I was in that moment as far as my sexuality and where I was going to go. It felt like I had cleansed myself of that confusion until about 3 years later.
Did you feel a sense of peace that you had not felt prior to that encounter?
I did.
It
changed the whole experience.
It changed the whole
experience. It lasted not more than a minute or two. It was just this presence, this person. Like I said, I don't know if he was a social worker or a nurse, but just the way he came into the space and the way he was there with me for that moment. And then I was going to talk to him, and then I had to throw up, and there it was.
It was, that makes me think about, I've been doing, I have relationships now with light workers and people like that. When they're doing the energy healing and stuff, and they have to go, and they tell you, and I went through a thing, you guys might remember, I couldn't stop coughing. And then I went to this retreat, and they were there, and they waited until the end of the weekend, and they were like, Lauren, you have taken on, since you began this journey here, you've been taking stuff from, even in the foster system, all those years. And you weren't, it's like in the movie, The Green Mile, when that big guy would heal people, and then he'd have to open his mouth and those things would come. Yeah, because we hold space. And I want you to talk about how important this is within the transformation process, that because I truly believe our vessel can only hold so much. That's why paying it forward and being of service is about pouring into others and it's got to be like water, constantly moving. Because if transformation doesn't happen, it's like stagnant water. It starts disease and decay. The moment you want to get rid of that, you take the dam away and let living flow come back into flow, and it starts healing immediately. So tell us about how this all plays into what you're showing people through this great program that you offer, and tell everybody about the Science of Transformation.
Well, so the Science of Transformation is all about coming into the best version of who we are. And it is taking all of these experiences across my lifetime and understanding that what I see as transformation is this ability to transcend and include. We're never going to be someone other than who we are. And what I mean by that is there are so many concepts about what transformation might or might not be, and who am I going to be when it's over, or when I go through it, or when I experience it. You're going to be the greatest version or a greater version of who you thought you were prior to the experience, because transcending and including is about going beyond what you know, going beyond what's safe and comfortable, but including what you learned as you go into a new space, because it becomes the foundation of what goes next. and what you step into next, because it elevates your perception, it elevates your experience, it elevates how you feel into the world, it elevates all aspects of who you are, and you begin to tap into a higher and higher elements of that expression. So you no longer like I don't the first part of my own personal transformation was the surrender to, this is the being that I am now. I am this powerful man who happens to be gay, who wants to get into the world and make an impact, who wants to, at that stage in my life, wanted to become someone who affected people. And so I thought acting was the way I was going to go about that. What you and I haven't talked about is what happened after the college experience, which is then meeting the woman that I would marry for 24 years. It's,
What?
yes.
I don't like cuss, but what the hell? I didn't know that.
Yes. So I was living in, I was living in New York.
So wait, time out.
Yeah.
Traffic guard, come on out
Sorry.
here and stop this.
We're going
with her little sign.
emergency exits, emergency
Stopping
exits.
it in all directions. Jim, so you're telling me all of that searching and seeking and running away to go, and then so somehow and then the bad experience with the one girl in college, and then you still ended up marrying someone, and you stayed there for 24 years. Who was inside that 24-year-old commitment? Was it, who was in there?
Well, she knew my history, interestingly enough. So she was, you're going to love this. She is still 21 years my senior. We met.
You love yourself some cougars.
I do tell you what.
They love you. They love themselves some you.
Yeah, that's some pretty boys. That's right. So I met her through a friend. I'd gone to California on a trip when I was living in New York. I met her. She was an amazing spiritual teacher, actually. She was a channel and a powerful, powerful woman who just, I mean, who could see through me like cellophane. It was just crazy. And I didn't know at the time, and wasn't even thinking of it. But I had spent the time since I had left my parents' home until I met her, which I think I was 19 or 20. I was 20, I think, 2021, and had gone through even more transformational because I moved to New York, realized that the acting thing wasn't for me. I didn't have the skin for it. I was still an arrogant young kid who didn't have, the arrogance was keeping me alive, but what was going on behind the arrogance was this desire to understand my place in the world. Met Mona. She hated me, literally hated me. She thought I was the most arrogant thing she'd ever met on the planet. This is the kid who found a teacher and said, I'm going to call you every 10 minutes because I have questions and things I need to know. I need these answers. And I would call her and I'd leave these horrible messages because she wouldn't call me back, you know.
I wonder why.
And flash forward to, I was sitting in my apartment in New York City. Actually, I was living in Jersey City at that time. And I had reached the point, I had gone to the woman who was my acting coach, and told her that I didn't have the skin. I was done. I couldn't do this anymore. But I didn't have any idea what I was going to do. I went home that night. This was in April. I remember the month. I don't remember the year. I wrote a Dear God letter. And I said, Dear God, my life. And at the end of the letter, I said, you know what? Here, as of this date, I think it was like April 23rd. I give my life to you. I don't care what you do with me. I don't care where you send me. I don't care. Just please do something, because I can't take this wandering aimlessly in the world experience. Please.
Yeah, all of us. Yeah, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Right. Yes.
24 hours later, I got a phone call from Mona. Hey, I knew this was happening, but I wasn't included in this process because I didn't know her. We're going to open the center in Arizona. Would you be willing to come out and help us for a couple months? Because some of the therapists that are coming have kids, and we're going to need some support around that and helping get blah, blah, blah. But would you be interested in coming out for a couple months to help us out? I'm like, yes, absolutely. That's a direction. I'm doing it, but I don't know how I'm going to need 2 months to get myself together. I got to pay my bills. I got to get out of my lease. This was on a Thursday. It was like Wednesday or Thursday of that week. I sat down after I talked to her and lined up the 5 things I had to get done. The following Tuesday, I was on a plane to Arizona.
Oh, wow.
left everything, got rid of all my stuff, went to Arizona, and was only supposed to be there for a few months, ended up being there for 24 years. Over the course of that time, realized that when I left, I had, this is going to sound goofy, but when I knew I was leaving New York, I had gone on a brown rice diet. Because in the late 80s, early 90s, that was a fad. Brown rice diet was a big deal because you could lose weight and you could do it. So I was on a brown rice diet and I was losing weight and thought I was doing great. I mean, I was looking good. I was, look at myself in the mirror, be like, damn, you're back to pretty again. This is good. Did not know that I was did not know that I was actually on my deathbed. I had contracted a deadly parasite in my intestines, called Sporidium. And in the time that Mona had come to New York and she was doing her work there, and I had helped to support her while she was there. And in that time, in the weeks between that and the time that I landed in Arizona, I'd gone from 165 pounds to 109 pounds. And when I got off the plane, she didn't know what to do. She just was floored. She had no idea what had happened in the interim. And I was
probably looking behind you to see if Sally Struthers was riding on the plane with you. You ready to feed the children.
Feed the children. So the next year was all about that. Was about that health process and unfolding all of that.
So that sounds like that could have been a near-death experience.
Oh, absolutely. I think part of the reason that I had chosen to go into the relationship with Mona and to evolve that was realizing that I had gone so hard coming out as a kid sexually. I was out of control. I mean, I just went whole hog into that end of the gay experience and I was in it. But what I realized, having gotten involved with the center, was I was on the path to being dead. I didn't think I was going to live.
When you said that end of the gay experience, what end?
The promiscuous sexual end.
Oh, slutty. Just say slutty. I was a hoe. Right.
I was a hoe.
Now, but mind you, this is during the AIDS era.
Yes, it was.
So there again, that juxtaposition. It's like you're being drawn, because I've always been told through my downloads that, because it asked me one day, Lauren, whenever you're ready to start investing as much in your life for healing as you've invested in killing yourself, you come and holler at me and we'll make some changes. Right. So it sounds like, you know what I mean? You have all of this going on, which is what a lot of us deal with and have dealt with. But once we see it for what it truly is, that entity never changes. You see what I mean? I mean, what it is never changes, because what it is the truth of what it is. And the truth is the only thing in the universe that cannot ever change.
Exactly.
So once we see the truth within the experience, within whatever it is, we now can see the truth of why it has to be within our experience in order for us to grow into the person that needs to be here tomorrow.
Yes.
That's how I feel about it. So tell us.
The beginning of a 20-year intensive university experience.
Well, obviously it was all purposeful, because everything you teach and share and live through, the lens that you live and look through today, was being put together. It's so interesting how the shards of glass that seem to have been stuck in us, either in our Achilles tendon or the bottom of the soft spot of our foot or in our eye, always something, shards of glass from things exploding, end up being the very pieces of glass that are placed inside our kaleidoscope of purpose one day when we're ready to look through the third eye of authenticity. And now it's a beautiful mosaic. Everything is useful, because everything we live is like a DNA helix. It's all swirling around each other. There is no beginning and there is no end. So Jim, today, tell us what the person looks like that is most successful by coming into and working with you and your team inside this thing known as the science of transformation. What do they need to feel? What should they be seeking to be, to consider reaching out and maybe pulling the trigger on working with someone like yourself?
I think the biggest things in my experience with my clients is that similar to my experience, they know there's more to their experience, but they're stuck or feeling managed or controlled by circumstance or by the events of their life or by the feelings that they have. And so what the science of transformation is about is recognizing that, like you are explaining so brilliantly, it's all about, that's all part of the kaleidoscope of who you are. It's never about this is wrong, take it out. It's about this is a perspective you've had that has served. Does it still serve you or does it not serve you? If it serves you, then let's bring it present so that it's serving your forward motion and not serving some old belief system or idea that really doesn't serve.
Thank you for saying that, because here's what I used to do, and I'm speaking from my own kitchen table. I used to eat from the plate of blessing through the what I would get as the reward dinner after getting through the other side of the battlefield. Now, what I wasn't doing for a number of years is there was always so much. It was so bountiful. It made what I went through seem this big. Do I really deserve this banquet? You know what I mean? Whereas before I knew there was a banquet and I didn't realize it's not good enough for Lauren to just be hungry. Lauren needs to be starving. Why? Because hungry people will eat anything, sure. But starving people, we'll eat everything. and that's what I needed. And that's really what I needed. So let's talk about, because I love this. Tell us what you meant by the title of your book, Jim, when you said fear is not a choice.
Fear is a choice.
I mean, fear is a choice.
It is a choice.
And I want to ask you this, because I've come to a new conclusion in 2021, that fearless. A lot of people think that means it's completely devoid of fear. You don't want any fear. No, I feel that you need a certain amount because it's that energy booster, that Cape Canaveral, if you will. It puts that behind it, underneath it, and around it for trajectory, because you need to bust through things you don't have control over that think that they got more power than they do. And so you need something that's going to bust through all that stuff that we don't see, but it is still there working around us. So tell us about how we can hunt, because fearless just means I need to fear a little bit less, enough so that I can pull the trigger and not stand there frozen in the deer in the headlights. Yeah. Tell us how you help people through this book. Who were you writing the book for, and what were you hoping we think one thing when we open the front cover, okay, let's see. And then when we're finished and we shut the cover, we go, what were you hoping they had now that they did not have on the front end?
A change in their relationship with fear, ultimately. And what do I mean by that is you will always be confronted with some form of fear in your world. Somehow, somewhere, stuff shows up all the time. The challenge in it is, are you reacting to it or are you responding to it? And I know that's linguistics, but it's a very real thing in that what we have been trained to do is react to fear. Fear, contract, pull back, don't, right? The reality of it is it's there to show us something. It is there because we are encountering a rub in our experience. So step back, look at it from a greater perspective, see what it is, and then respond to it accordingly. It doesn't mean the feeling isn't going to be there. It means you are not driven by that feeling. You're using it to inform your next experience. So it says, okay, maybe it's about be more. I think for me, fear is about being more aware. It's okay. If fear is a contracting experience, it means that my consciousness right now is trying to pull back from what it is I'm being confronted with. It's trying to separate from it. And I'm saying, no, you don't have to separate. Whatever it is you think you're contracting from is just something you don't understand yet. So maybe step back in your own consciousness so that you can look at the bigger picture of it, but don't contract from it, because that's a form of resistance. And that's where I think fear becomes a challenge, is when fear becomes resistance. That's where things fall apart. That's where disease happens. That's where mental problems happen. That's where emotional craziness happens. But when you are in response, you're looking at all of that going, yeah, none of that is useful. So how can I approach this thing that is bringing this energy to me that I don't know what to do with yet? And then you get to be with yourself. You get to be with all of those pieces of glass that you collected throughout your life that took you into that transformational space. And you say, what do I do now?
Exactly, because I believe if the right understanding, the lens that you experience fear through, because it is a force. It's more than just an emotion. It is a force. It can be revitalizing just as quickly as it can be paralyzing, and it's because there are only two sponsoring thoughts: one of fear or one of love, and that determines if you're looking through the cataract eye or the 20/20 vision eye. And that's why I call it the third eye of authenticity, because even if you haven't gotten it right yet, like you were doing when you were searching, you were never wrong.
Right.
You were always being authentic in the moment. And that is what we have to, and sometimes it doesn't have to make sense because at the time, because that is a part of the adventure with truth and inside of truth, is that you have to believe in faith. And not the only thing I believe we cannot pray for. Because if you pray for faith and it's handed to you, then it's not faith. Because faith is proof of things you don't have proof of. Right. So if it's handed to you, there's the proof. So now it's not faith.
But that you've experienced, which is even more amazing. Yeah.
I want everybody to know where they can continue the dialogue with you and through the work you're doing. One of those ways is on your screen right now, adventuresintruth.com, where you can go and find out all about this wonderful show. And there's other things on there that are of a positive nature that will pour into you in one way or another. And then also, if you want your copy of the book, and I highly recommend you grab one or two, give one away, fearisachoicebook.com. Jim, anything you'd like to say? We got about 1 minute left before we say goodbye for today.
For me, this is about the year of conscious creation. And this is about, let's choose things that forward our momentum, that forward the energy of our lives in a way that opens us continually. I've been doing this movement called My World is Good, which is nothing more than a focused intention on a neutral, positive statement that puts energy and love into your space and into the world, because I believe that what we see in the world is simply the reflection of our perception.
Amen.
And so if we can put that into the space, there's a whole other section of my life experience that we didn't get to talk about, which we can at another point, but it's that's added to all of this as well, because I've been through cancer, I've been through AIDS and HIV and all that good stuff as well. So it has been a constant evolution of what is this adventure unfolding for me and how can I step into it instead of stepping back from it.
There you go.
And every time I step in, the doors open and it's spectacular what shows up.
Yes.
But you can't know until you step through. And
you sure won't. You certainly won't. What a wonderful way to end today's episode of Bathrobe Moments and start the episode of the rest of your story within this day. I want you to take everything you've received today and package it up and give it to someone else. No matter what it looks like on the outside, it's what they will do and how it will change the inside that matters. So get out there and do what we do, you guys. Just reinvest, re-sign the contract with what is greater every day to do your best. Don't think you need all 26 letters of the alphabet to write your story today. You really just need to. Go out and find that E and that R. Take bright to brighter, smart to smarter, nice to nicer. And we'll see you back here tomorrow morning, God willing, at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time for our next installment of Bathrobe Moments. Now get out there and be the gift you'd like to receive. Have a great day, Jim. God bless you. Thank you,
Lauren. Thank you. Great to see you.
All right. Same here. Bye,
Bye everybody.
Bye-bye.
Show me your soul. Baby, I'll show you mine. Show me your soul. Honey, it's way past time. How expensive do I have to be? Need I spell it out before you get it, baby? Show me your soul. And honey, I'll show you mine. I'll show you mine. Oh, I'm standing right here holding up a sign.